This video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the northeastern part of Ukraine. As you can see, we have lots of interesting updates and details exactly from this area. I would like to remind you that several days ago the Russians began their summer offensive operation in the direction of the city of Sumy, and as a result of clashes during the previous days, the Russians managed to improve their position significantly, and this situation forced the Ukrainians to begin acting, to do something with the purpose to stop or at least to slow down the Russians. And during the previous night we got lots of very important and interesting details from Kursk and Bryansk regions, so let's discuss them in details. First, let's talk about the situation that took place in the vicinity of the city of Bryansk during the previous night. According to information we have, the derailment of a passenger train in the Bryansk region occurred due to the collapse of a bridge span as a result of illegal interference in transport activities. This is the first report that we got from this area during the previous night. So basically what happened? A Russian train was moving probably in the direction of the city of Bryansk, and when this train was moving above the bridge, just a regular road bridge in the vicinity of the settlement by the name of Vygochi, somebody activated explosive. There was a very huge explosion and the bridge collapsed and the train was stopped. So this is the consequences of this attack. So as we can see, somebody destroyed exactly this bridge, and now the Russians lost one of the most important logistic road between, let's say, the territory of the Republic of Belarus and the city of Bryansk itself. Several hours later we got another episode, another interesting piece of news, but this time from the road of A142. We are talking about this situation. Now we see another picture with another bridge, and another railways bridge was destroyed. At night on the 48th kilometer of the Trosna-Kalinovka highway in the Kursk region, while a locomotive was moving, there was another explosion. There was a blow up of railway bridge, and the span of which collapsed onto the highway. So another logistic road collapsed as a result of some attack. So the Russians are saying that most likely these two attacks were carried out by the Ukrainians. So now let's return back to this map, and I would like to add railways and logistic roads. So this is the first one, black line. This is the line, this is a red line that goes from the border with the Republic of Belarus in the direction of the city of Bryansk. So this is the first railways, and the bridge was destroyed exactly along these railways. Furthermore, this is another logistic road that goes from the city of Bryansk in the southeastern direction towards the city of Kursk, and these railways also collapsed as a result of attack. So as you can see, both railways were destroyed right exactly in the area of Russian summer offensive operation. We are not saying that the entire logistic of the armed forces of the Russian Federation collapsed, but obviously the Russians would be forced to stop or at least to slow down their activities during the next days, while the Russian services and secure services are clearing this area from parts and from the consequences of those attacks. Another important thing that I would like to point your attention is that to understand what exactly happened there, we need to increase the numbers of updates probably since the 21st of May of 2025. This is the situation by the at the beginning since the 21st of May of 2025, and then we got very interesting article that was published by the Russian sources. Let's discuss this article in detail. Today, on the 21st of May, the Russian segment of Telegram was agitated by the unclear situation in the Bryansk region. According to some reports, more than 70 people unnoticed slipped almost to Bryansk itself. Local residents reported that closure of three roads towards Myakashevo, Subotovo and Lopushi. Later, the sabotage and reconnaissance group grew into a unit of more than 100 people. So this interesting article was published by the 21st of May of 2025, so basically 10 days ago. And once ago, when talking about this article, three roads were closed in the vicinity of Myakashevo, Subotovo and Lopushi. Slopushy. So when talking about this map, this is Myakisheva, this is Subotova, and this is Slopushy. So the Russians closed this region because, according to several sources, a sabotage and reconnaissance group was discovered exactly in this area. And now when talking about events that took place today on the 1st of June, this bridge was destroyed. This bridge was destroyed, and as you can see, most likely on the 21st of May of 2025, so basically 10 days ago, the Ukrainian sabotage and reconnaissance group established explosive exactly in this area, and they were discovered while they were retreating back to the territory of Ukraine. This is very interesting situation because, as you can see from this, 10 days ago, the Russians managed to discover those Ukrainians who are responsible most likely for the bridge explosion that took place during the previous 24 hours. But the most important, we see that the Russians during this period of time haven't carried out special activities, special, let's say, measures with the purpose to secure this territory, because obviously when the Russians discovered 10 days ago sabotage and reconnaissance group in this area, first thing they should do then to secure area and to check every single bridge, every single probably railway square kilometer, with the purpose to be sure to ensure that there were no explosive established by the Ukrainians. But the Russians did not do that. Another important thing, and another bridge that was destroyed today took place along A142 road, so in this place. And this is almost, let's say, almost 50 kilometers from the border with Ukraine. And when talking about this territory, during the previous days, we haven't received anything regarding, let's say, any sabotage and reconnaissance group that was discovered by the Russians. So nothing came from this area during the previous 10 days. Which means that Ukrainians have some roads, some secret roads to get there without any problems, which means that the Russians currently, as I understand, have problems along the border from the Republic of Belarus to, let's say, Sumy region, to the area of Russian summer offensive. And as I understand, there are gaps on the border that can be used by the Ukrainians to enter deep inside of the territory of the Russian Federation. So, of course, let's wait and see what is going to be next. And most likely, and we expect that Ukrainians established more explosive along the railways, but for some reason, just 2 of them worked. Probably several of them didn't work, or the Ukrainians are planning to use them in the very near future.
Jeg hedder Trine Terkelsen, og jeg synes, at du skal gå ind og høre playlisten Godnatsange. Der har jeg nogle af mine fortolkninger.
Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the Sumy direction. As we discussed, the Russians continued their offensive operation, and that also forced the Ukrainians to deploy their FPV drone operators in this area with the purpose to support Ukrainian, let's say, defense units, with the purpose to slow down or to stop the Russians. And this situation forced the Russians to intensify their intelligence activities. For example, in this video we can see how the Russians managed to discover another deployment point of Ukrainian FPV drone operators, and as a result of Iskander attack, this temporary deployment point was destroyed. And this is not the first place with FPV drone operators that was destroyed by the Russians. Another episode took place in the vicinity of the settlement by the name of Kralevets. Here we can see the same story: an airfield in the vicinity of the settlement, several vehicles, and Ukrainians that were trying to prepare drones to launch them deep inside of the territory of Russia or in the direction of Russian offensive. But the Russians attacked this territory as well, but this time the Russians attacked this territory with cluster rounds. Another temporary deployment point of FPV drone operators of the armored forces of Ukraine was destroyed. So we see that the Russians probably reinforced this direction heavily. Now they have problems with logistics, but we see that the Russians know for sure what exactly they're going to do and what exactly they're planning to do next. Furthermore, the Russians have dozens of drones above this area. The Russians continue hunting and destroying Ukrainian vehicles, artillery systems, and of course temporary deployment points. The Russians intensify their activities, and we see that this Russian summer offensive operation is gaining momentum. When talking about the situation on the ground, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions significantly. For example, this is the situation that you can see right now in front of your screens, is the situation by the beginning of the 1st of June of 2025, and this is the situation that you can see in front of your screens is the situation by the end of the 31st of May, when the Russians, according to several sources, just secured the village of Dyliivka and Alexeyevka. And today, as you can see, the Russians moved even further and they improved their positions around the village of Alexeyevka by taking under control additional tree lines. And according to information we have, as you can see, the Russians entered the most northern part of the village of Kondratyevka. So the battle for this territory is about to be finished probably, and during the next several days or even hours, the Russians will secure the village of Kondratyevka. Furthermore, as you can see, the Russians improved their positions between the villages of Lokny, Belovody, and Yablunovka. Currently, the village of Yablunovka is already semi-encircled. And furthermore, the Russians continue improving their positions around the settlement of Lokny and Yunakievka by taking under control additional tree lines in the fortifications. So the Russians continue their offensive. Let's wait and see what is going to be next. Obviously, now the Russians will suffer some problems with logistics, but once again, 10 days ago, the Russians knew that some sabotage and reconnaissance group was working in the vicinity of that bridge, and we see that since that moment the Russians haven't secured that area, and now the Russians most likely will suffer some problems with logistics. Anyway, the Russians will secure this bridge and the Russians will remove this train from the railways, but now it will take probably up to 5 days to restore this logistic road, and obviously these 5 days can be decisive both for the Russians and for the Ukrainians. Now let's talk about the Kharkiv area. During the previous nights, we got additional updates that the Russians were attacking the city of Chuguyev. And this, when talking about this area, the Russians, as a result of reconnaissance operation, managed to discover another airfield with well-equipped position or with a large drone control point of the Ukrainian armed forces. And the Russians attacked this territory also with Iskander missile. As a result of this attack, Ukrainians lost up to 6 drone launching system, probably 4 light vehicles, 2 trucks, and around 30 kamikaze drones. So huge losses the Ukrainians suffered as a result of another attack. Now let's move to the situation on the ground in the Sivers direction. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions. And currently, the Russians, as you can see, according to map changes, are trying to improve their positions on the line between the settlement of Vyivka along the railways, the village of Novoselka, and the village of Verkhnykamenskaya. This is the first video that was published by the Russian sources, and in this video we can see how a Russian soldier was establishing the Russian flag on the territory of the village of Dyliivka. And this video confirms that most likely as a result of clashes, the Ukrainians were forced to abandon their positions in the settlement completely. Later we got another video a bit further in the northern directions to the village of Dyliivka. In this, here we can see how Russian soldier dropped a grenade or mine to inside of Ukrainian stronghold, and as a result of explosion, this stronghold was destroyed. So this episode took place exactly in this area, and based on this video, we came to the conclusion that this pocket was taken by the Russians. Furthermore, the Russians began artillery preparation further in the northern direction along the tree line between the village of Dyliivka and the settlement of Verkhnykamenskaya, which means that the Russians are going to restore control over this logistic road. This will improve Russian positions and reinforce their further offensive attempts in the western directions towards the city of Siversk itself. So the Russians were bombing this, let's say, road, and most likely this is the first target, to connect the village of Verkhnykamenskaya and the village of Dyliivka with the road between them. This will allow the Russians to move further in the western direction. So we see that the Siversk defense line is collapsing and collapsing. Now let's move further. Let's discuss the situation in the Konstantinovka direction. During the previous 24 hours, the most important updates came to us from the village of Dyliivka. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians improved their position significantly, and this morning we got first this video. And in this video we can see how Russian stormtroopers were moving through these three lines in the direction of Ukraine positions, clearing 1 square kilometer after another. Based on this video, this morning several mappers adjusted their maps in this area, but probably a few hours later we got another video from the village of Dyliivka. In this video we can see the village of Dyliivka itself almost reduced to ruins, and in this very moment we can see how a Russian soldier raised another Russian flag in this building, and as you can see, these Russian soldiers weren't afraid of anything. They came to open air, open space, and they were waving with Russian flag, which means that there were no Ukrainians anymore. So this building was geolocated. This is exactly the place where the Russians raised their flag. And based on this video, we have adjusted this map. We have adjusted the territory between the village of Dyliivka to the village settlement of Druzhba. Obviously, this is a breakthrough. As of the beginning of this is the situation by the end of the 31st of May, so yesterday in the evening, and this is the situation by the morning of the 1st of June. So as for now, we don't know for sure what is the status of the village of Dyliivka in the northern part, but we believe that the northern part of the settlement was also taken by the Russians. Anyway, now we understand that most likely the Ukrainians would be forced to abandon their positions in this pocket as soon as possible towards the village of Bielaya Gora, and the Russians would be able to maintain their positions between the settlement of Dyliivka and Canal Seversky Donetsk-Donbass, something like along this red line. So this pocket collapsed most likely, and during the next 24 hours these territories would be taken by the Russians completely, and the battle for the settlement of Bielaya Gorovka will begin. As for the Kliban-Byksky pocket and the situation along N32 road, during the previous 24 hours we haven't received anything special. There are very heavy clashes. The Ukrainians managed to stabilize the situation with additional reinforcements and reserves, and now the Russians were forced to slow down a bit until they are able to handle with these came reserves. And now let's move to the South Donetsk direction, where the Russians also continue their offensive operation. The most interesting updates are coming from the settlement of Novopol. According to several mappers, the Russians improved their positions and took under control several tree lines further in the western direction. Now we see that the Russians continue advancing further in the direction of the Zaporozhye region, and basically the Russians reached the border between the Donetsk region and the region of